I've talked about plenty of stuff to do with Super Dragon Ball Heroes in previous videos, and I thought it'd be fun to sometime in the future talk about Heroes' crazy elements even outside of, the game original forms. But before I talk about any of that though, it's crucial to understand the starting point of it all, and that is the 2010 MMORPG Dragon Ball Online. A game that has some of the craziest original lore of any Dragon Ball story after the original manga. There's nothing that even comes close, and both Xenoverse and Heroes eventually start taking elements from it, because that's how dense the amount of original content was. This will be a long deep dive, so no more wasting time. Let's dive right into the official Dragon Ball Online timeline. So here's a couple dates to keep in mind, just for reference in relation to the dates that will be introduced in this story. Chapter 1 of Dragon Ball to the end of Z takes place between the ages of 749 and 784. It's a span of 35 years in this universe, with Goku being 47 at the end of his journey, not factoring in the time chamber and times he was dead, which would make his physical body 43. The timeline of Dragon Ball Online going forward does not acknowledge GT, Battle of Gods, Super, or anything created after the original manga. But even without them, there is a rich history with many events I'd like to break down. 2 of these events happened before the end of Z on the official online timeline. Starting in 779, Launch escapes prison for the official 100th time. In 780, Pilaf makes another failed attempt at taking over the world. And from now on, we are in post-end of the series territory. Age 787, Mr. Satan wins the 29th Tenkaichi Budokai by having Buu clear the roster and sell out to him at the end of the finals. Basically, what we see he's been doing since the end of Z. The popularity of the tournament skyrockets, with the 2 idolized as stars. In that same year, Dende decides that due to both Elder Kai's objections and the world now at peace, it would be best for the Dragon Balls to be deactivated. This way, the natural order of the universe can be maintained, and evil can no longer misuse them. 3 years pass, and in age 790, the 30th Tenkaichi Budokai goes the same as the last one, with the whole tournament rigged in favor of the 2 typical cheaters. At this time, Buu gains a sense of longing for a relationship, feeling jealous of the couples he sees around him. After he finds a special book from Mr. Satan's library called Bob and Margaret's Forbidden Games, which funny enough is also the same book Roshi taught Goku to read with, he comes up with the idea to split part of himself off and turn it into his ideal partner. That would be the creation of Miss Buu, and he has a lovely relationship with her going forward. The following year, they conceive a child by combining pieces of themselves to create a single entity. This would be the starting point of the future Majin race, who all can trace their ancestry back to Buu. In age 793, Mr. Satan announces his retirement from martial arts and future tournaments. The reason given to the public is that he graciously stepped down to give a shot to the next generation of fighters. But the real reason is Buu lost interest in rigging tournaments for him, and so it became impossible for him to stay on top, as a normal 57-year-old human. He would then attempt to capitalize on his former success with the telecommunicated Satan-style martial arts course. Sold as a way to become like the world savior, it was really just a cash grab that was overpriced and utilized special effects to sell the audience on his power. A bunch of cheap tricks, as he used to criticize key battles as in the past. This didn't go over very well, and in the following year, angry customers attempt to confront him at his home. Eventually, a 15-year-old Pan is forced to drive them off. With such a big scandal on their hands, the only way to salvage the situation was for a rebrand into the Pan Fighting Network, with Pan as the teacher from here on out. She would ask Bulma to create a way for people to battle each other across the world without having to be in the same place. This resulted in the telecommunicated martial arts dojo, and it became very popular. In age 796, Mr. Satan stars in the film The Legend of Satan. He utilizes special effects to emulate the techniques used by the Z Fighters to defeat the movie's antagonists. While it doesn't do well at the box office, it eventually develops a cult following and inspires many people to learn how to control their ki from Pan's teachings. He eventually becomes a prolific movie star with many titles and genres under his belt. Now to the one I expect most people know. In age 801, Goku, now at 64, with his body biologically being 60, feels that death will come for him soon. Why or how has he figured this out? Nobody really knows. All I can say is, I relate, Goku, but he leaves Earth with Vegeta, wishing to settle their rivalry once and for all. As I said in my last video, Toriyama implied Goku would probably never have any more life or death battles again after the end of Z, and would probably only face his rivals in friendly bouts for the rest of his days. This, however, would be his last and only serious battle since Buu. The two are never seen again, and years later the explosion of a supernova is detected, assumedly from their final battle. This was the end for two of the greatest warriors in the universe, the last two remaining full-blooded Saiyans, and the world would have to move on without them. Age 804. Goku and Vegeta's deaths still linger heavy on those who knew and loved them. Gohan decides to reflect on his great power and potential that his dad always believed in, and decides to study the source of that strength. This leads him to writing a book called The Science of Ki Control. This would inform the general public of this higher world of martial arts, and it became popular with many people learning how to fight through Gohan's research. I personally really love this, as this feels like the natural conclusion to Gohan's journey of being a scholar. It sometimes felt like a secondary aspect of him, something to make him a little bit different than Goku and the other Z fighters. Now, it's a natural combination of his skills as a fighter and a scholar in order to contribute something amazing to the future of this world. Many people took interest in the section of the book called Catching Can Be Cut, where Gohan, reflecting back on his training on the Supreme Kai world, reaches the conclusion that catching steel, the hardest known substance in the universe, can be cut by condensing ki into its utmost limits and forming a blade. However, as such concentration would be nigh impossible for the average person, it would be easier to channel such power into a real sword. And depending on the size, the weight and gravity would help condense the ki around the blade even easier. The following year, Trunks and Goten become aware of this rising interest in sword fighting and proclaim, "Swordsmanship's cool, isn't it? Let's set up an awesome school all by ourselves." Motivated by this goal, they start intensely training and develop their natural potential that they've carried since they were young. They then form the Kikoken Jutsu School, or the Energy Control Fencing School, a style which focuses on techniques like the sword slash, multiple sword slash, flash slash, gravity break, and more. Age 820. The world's hero, Mr. Satan, passes away. The cause of death was never given, but he is held a funeral by the Earth's king. However, his passing brings about one of the first waves of terror the Earth will face for the foreseeable future. Remnants of Frieza's army had been waiting for this day, led by the Frieza Honor Guard, who once served to protect King Cold and Lord Frieza. They were absent when their two leaders hurried off to Earth in search of revenge, and therefore had no clue who ended their lives. In their research, they presumed the purported strongest man on Earth, Mr. Satan, was the one who ended their leaders. Believing that they have no chance against someone who bested their all-powerful emperors, they patiently waited until they knew he had passed away. Feeling victory was assured now, they descend upon the planet, with the resisting Earth's royal army falling against them. The Frieza Force utilizes a species of Bouillon-type aliens, and due to their crazy defensive capabilities, are undeterred by all manner of firepower and martial arts. Goten and Trunks find that this is the perfect opportunity to put their new fighting style to the test, and they influence many martial artists who witness them. As the war rages on, the Frieza Force receives intel that Trunks was the killer of Cold and Frieza, so they set their sights on West City. The place had become a hotspot for Majin refugees who lost their homes in this great war, and many would even settle down in the city long into the future, developing their own culture. But now their new home was also under siege, and it was only a matter of time. Bulma, understanding the threat of annihilation her home now faces, finds a way to store the entire city into a capsule. Meanwhile, multiple Z fighters reunite at Master Roshi's, those being an 87-year-old Tien, Krillin at 84, Gohan at 63, Trunks at 54, Goten at 53, and Pan at 41. The details of the battle are lost to time, but it's safe to say the soldiers who felt they weren't above Namek Frieza level eventually fell to the Z Warriors, with no casualties to our cast. The remaining remnants on Earth went into hiding under the leadership of Frieza Honor Guard Captain Wada, biding their time until they could strike again. Age 821. After Gohan's book gained popularity, many sought out a school to hone their skills. Master Roshi caught wind of this, yet he denied to take on any students. Instead, he gave way to the future he foretold in the 22nd Tenkaichi Budokai all those years ago by passing the role of teacher on to Krillin and Tien. He asked them both one question: what could you do as a warrior of Earth? Krillin and Tien reflected on the battles of their past, and their conclusions became the foundations of the new Turtle School and new Crane School. Krillin reflected on the gap between Earthlings and the larger powers in the universe, like Namekians. In a world where you may not be able to win these battles on your own, he believed that Earthling warriors could take on a supportive role, hindering the enemy's movements, strengthening your allies. These are aspects needed to win when facing overwhelming odds. To him, assistance was not a lesser role at all. He would then establish the school on the island he and Goku trained on in memory of his best friend, and also because it invigorated his competitive spirit. These beliefs and teachings would continue to live on in the school long after his death. The new Turtle School would teach techniques like the Super Kamehameha, Scattering Bullet, and consecutive discs. The students would also be given staff weapons, similar in principle to Master Roshi's staff or Goku's power pole. Tien also came to recognize the large gap in power between Earthlings and the rest of the universe, but he refused to accept it. He continued to train and travel the world, eventually reaching the conclusion that he should place importance on perfecting ki-based attacks. He thought back to his Neo Tri-Beam holding off Cell, and Goku's Spirit Bomb destroying Kid Buu. No matter how much stronger your opponent is, if you can push your power to the extreme, then the odds would no longer be impossible. This was the basis for the new Crane School, which he would establish on the Mountain of Refreshing Scenery, formerly the Ox King's home Mount Frypan, in order to always remember Roshi's teachings. Also, in a meta sense, this is where we both saw the first Kamehameha of the series by Roshi, and Goku's first Kamehameha. So, this place holds special importance in the history of ki-based attacks. Perhaps in reference to the history of the mountain they train on, practitioners are given weapons similar to the Bansho fan. The moves taught in this style were the Dodon Ray, the Dodon Ray Barrage, and the Tri-Beam Cannon. The most powerful moves in the school would come at the cost of your own health, making them high-risk and high-reward techniques. These would be the Tri-Beam and Self-Destruction, in reference to the self-sacrificial nature of the Crane School Masters. As powerful as they are, it's clear the support style Krillin taught would be a necessary component in keeping them safe in the face of overwhelming opponents. With these founding principles, it's apparent the two schools would never be at odds again. Age 824. After the absolute devastation the Royal Army faced against the Frieza Force, Capsule Corp would establish the Balma Foundation and create the Tenkaichi Kagaku Hakurankai, or the World's Strongest Science Exhibition, as a scientific equivalent to the Tenkaichi Budokai. Basically, it's the world's greatest science fair, and with it, technology made great strides in progress. Age 825. The theme park Booby World. Yeah, get your laughs out now. We know the name's funny. Opens in South City, with most of the staff being Majins. The founder of this park is a man by the name of Mr. B, a blind boy who once had his eyesight restored by Buu and renamed himself to B to never forget that act of kindness. He gained a considerable amount of wealth and wanted to give thanks to his hero, but Buu was always busy with the Tenkaichi Budokai, so he never had the chance to meet him. He created the theme park as a way to give back to the people after the death of Mr. Satan and the attacks of the Frieza Force remnants left the world in a state of despair. He hoped the magic of the Majin race would help create a place to bring back smiles to the people of Earth, and the construction worker Majins would hone their skills, eventually becoming Daimajins. A year later, 90-year-old Yajirobe would descend Korin Tower to start cultivating sensu beans on the surface. Also, since it won't come up again, Korin's around. He's just like Roshi in that he'll never die of old age. Age 834, Frieza remnants now show themselves again and start attacking. A Majin named Mani Mani loses his life protecting his people. His heroic sacrifice would profoundly impact many Majins around the world, and those influenced by him would create the Majin classes of Ultima, Granma, Plasma, and Karma. Age 839. The Ki Battle is a new device unveiled in the 5th World's Greatest Science Tournament. The science of ki control theory from Gohan is applied to these devices that can store the user's ki and amplify it for great power. Mechs in these tournaments start being equipped with the Ki Battle. Now we enter one of the darkest periods of the timeline with Age 851. A powerful entity known only as Mira appears on New Namek with an army of androids, looking to obtain the Dragon Balls. The Namekians refuse to surrender them, and in response, Mira creates a spirit bomb formed from the energy of his soldiers. In an act of quick thinking, Grand Elder Mori and hundreds of Namekians quickly summon Purunga and wish themselves to Earth before Mira destroys New Namek, erasing their homeworld yet again. The surviving Namekians take up residence on Earth and get in contact with Dende. Dende warns the Earth's king about the incident with New Namek and the being called Mira, but they decide it's best to withhold this information as to not spread panic to the people of Earth. At first, the Namekians are protected in West City, but eventually they move out to a place they name Purunga Rocks, and also Yunzabit Heights, the place where Kami's spaceship landed long ago before the events of Dragon Ball. Age 853. The Namekians, wanting to atone for the loss of their homeworld, start training to defend themselves. The styles they develop would be the basis for the modern classes of Namekians, such as the Shadow Warrior, Dark Warrior, Denden Priest, and the Poco Priest. However, the evils of one Namekian still remained, as some of the mutant spawn of the old King Piccolo were still around. They were found hidden away in incubated eggs in places like Pilos Castle, and sometimes they would even breed naturally in the wild. Piccolo was aware they existed for a while, but couldn't solve the situation on his own, and just left them be. Grand Elder Mori suggests Piccolo and other Namekians gather the monsters up so they could be secured. Some Dragon Clan members started researching the monsters and how to become their handlers, becoming the Poco Priest class, which was led by Dende's younger brother Cargo. Yeah, that brother of Dende. In Age 855, the Capsule Corp Space Research Institute is founded. The king requests they develop ways to efficiently monitor space, considering what happened to New Namek just 4 years ago. Space travel is possible for Earth at this point, but not many are really capable of going. But to any space travelers out there, a license system is put in place to better monitor threats, allowing only permitted people to pass through. Age 891, the 100th anniversary of the Majin race's birth. The Majin Buu Memorial is built, which is a reconstruction of Majin Buu's house. Kinda a little insensitive considering, Buu's house was made of people molded like clay, but whatever, they probably don't know that. Editing Nathaniel here. After talking about him creating the Majin race with his wife Miss Buu, I realized Buu is no longer talked about in Dragon Ball Online lore as if he's still around. So even though he's like this immortal being, and I don't think the Frieza Force would have been able to kill him, he's apparently just gone or dead. I don't really know what happened there. Monuments of an old philosopher named Jerinovich are built across the world. Not much is said about the guy, but he is talked about in a textbook at Orange Star High School. Age 900, transportation becomes more streamlined thanks to teleportation machines invented by the Yardrats. Age 910. The Frieza forces hiding out on Earth start to expand their influence on the planet, with the center of their influence being Booby Island. Age 920 marks 100 years since the passing of Mr. Satan. People start requesting that Mr. Satan's controversial status be reevaluated, and the Legend of Satan is screened again with the newest CGI and filmmaking techniques. Because of this, a Satan-style branch of martial arts is then taught in the Pan Fighting Network. Age 940. It's been 98 years since the arrival of the Namekians on Earth, and things have been slowly changing. Apparently, a group of Namekians unknowingly settled in Isuri's lake near an old throne of the once great King Piccolo. The corruptive aura radiating from it caused evil to seep into their hearts, and they became successors to the long-forgotten Demon Clan. This evil permeated into a giant evil egg, and after it was discovered, it was kept sealed and hidden away. Age 951, the 100th anniversary of the destruction of New Namek and the Namekians' immigration to Earth. An important event that changed Namekian culture permanently, and far more drastically than Frieza destroying old Namek. So much has changed since then, and it will only continue to change from here on out. Age 962. The brand new Capsule Corp History Museum opens to the public. It's a grand opening celebrating both the 250th anniversary of Capsule Corp and the history of Earth. In age 972, the sealed evil Namekian egg hatches. Reports are conflicting, but this 32-year-long incubation process hatched a giant, powerful dark Namekian given the name the First Narok, and a new cast of dark Namekians are born with their numbers growing, taking on the same name of Narok. The growing forces decide to strike, and a civil war is raised against the good Namekians ruled by Grand Elder Mori. At some point, a dark Namekian named Gamelon became the leader of the Narok. Envious of the position Dende holds, he sets out to become the god of the dark Namekians. He also starts mind-controlling some Namekians to join his army. Piccolo, feeling responsible for letting this evil perpetuated by his predecessor get out of hand, keeps a close eye on them. Age 974, the ethologist Dr. Hunbolt, a scientist who studies the behavior of animals, starts to develop animal data, a catalog of known creatures on Earth. With the crazy biodiversity of the dragon world and new species introduced in the last couple centuries, something like this became a necessity. Age 975. With the growing threats of the Frieza remnants and the Dark Namekians uprising, and the still unknown threat of Mira and his mysterious army on the horizon, the world needed heroes once again. Any Z-fighters besides Piccolo and Roshi were long gone by this point, and so Dende decided to draw upon the methods Piccolo used to prepare Gohan for the Saiyan invasion oh so long ago. The Troublemaker Education System was established, where children would be removed from their homes and find a way to survive in nature, all in the hopes of creating a new savior. The Earth's King complies with Dende's request, and the policy is implemented. Age 988. A group of criminals by the name of the Pila Gang cut down the stone mushrooms of Kikono Rocks. The group would be led by the man named Pila, a man who feels awfully familiar. Age 990. The Earth is in absolute turmoil. As world peace collapses, villainous organizations start forming across the world. And as these negative feelings and energies start permeating throughout the planet, wild animals and demonic beasts become more rampant and violent. It's a dark age for the world, and those striving for peace are getting desperate for something to change before everything collapses around them. Dende installs Popo stones around the world with the help of fortune teller Baba. These allow people who touch the stone to return to it if they faint in battle. A robot priestess gives a prophecy to Pila, and with it he desires to fulfill his goal of world domination, following the legacy of his ancestor Pilaf. Meanwhile, Toa, the sister of the late king of the demon realm Dabura, appears from the future in a time machine. She investigates the ruins of Jiro's old lab and starts her research on biotechnology and artificial humans. Age 991. It's the 200th birthday of the Majin race. The Tenkaichi Budokai's current champion is a man named Monger, rumored to be the reincarnation of Mr. Satan. He becomes widely known for an incident where he participated in a sparring match against 100 robots. The growing population of engineers wish to prove that robots aren't weak, and so the Tenkaichi Budokai opens the Ultimate Fighting Division, where participants can use armor, weapons, and robots. The format would separate into youth and adult divisions once again, and the types of matches would also expand into single and team battles. But, no matter how times change, the basic rules remain the same, and the Renout rule remains in play. Meanwhile, an anthropomorphic bison named General Bon creates the Red Pants Army, a successor to the Red Ribbon Army of old. He wishes to reinstate the nation so that they can try and take over the world once again. However, he was not the true leader. Instead, a clone of Dr. Gero and Android 9, codenamed Project Red, a giant android resembling Commander Red, were the real leaders behind the scenes. Many humanoid animals and earthlings joined, and androids were now a large portion of the fighting force. These would include multiple copies of Android 16, Android 8000, and Android 19000. They would make contact with Frieza Force remnants and form an alliance to create an oil field facility. Also, due to his constantly upgraded cybernetics, Tao Pai Pai had become truly immortal as he continued to live on in this age as Tao X. Fun fact, Tao Pai Pai was born in age 459 as he and his brother Shen were alive along with Roshi during King Piccolo's invasion. So, by the time of his fight with Goku, he was already 291 years old. Considering this, he would be 532 years old as Tao X. Age 992. The gun Batel is invented by Capsule Corporation researcher Guy, which is a gun that fires ki blasts using the principle of ki Batel. A couple years later in Age 995, young Capsule Corp employees Sho and Lon defect from the company to join P-Law's gang. Some things are just eternal. Age 996. Due to many accidents and misuse, people can now only use gun Batel if they carry a license. Finally, the dreaded time has come in the age of 998, as Mira's army descends upon Earth in his ship, making Booby Island their base of operations. Dende requests that Piccolo investigates all the evil organizations present on Earth in order to gather information on their movements. Capsule Corp at this time starts creating and mass-producing the support robot GBT Hope. Age 999. A face not seen on this Earth for hundreds of years arrives in the form of future Trunks, who is now a time patroller. With his time machine, he is sent to this time period by the Supreme Kai of Time to inform them of Mira's intentions. Mira is actually a time traveler like Trunks, who has been able to accomplish this thanks to a time passport that he stole. With it, he's been interfering with history everywhere with his army called the Time Breakers, creating paradoxes left and right. What the heroes don't know is that the Demon Realm scientist Toa traveled to Jiro's lab in age 990 to find out how to create Mira as her new King of the Demon Realm. Mira desires to become the strongest being in history, being part Demon Realm race with the DNA of future Earthlings and outfitted with android parts. He's later confirmed to also have Saiyan DNA within him, but that may just be a byproduct of Earthlings descended from Goku or Vegeta's lineage. To achieve his goals, he harvests Keely to strengthen himself, the same type of key measurement Babidi utilized to summon Majin Buu. Piccolo returns from his investigation with disturbing news. Mira's army, the Frieza Force Remnants, the Red Pants Army, the Dark Namekians, and the P-Law gang have all teamed up into a great evil alliance. At this point, even without these new allegiances, there's no one on Earth that could stand up to Mira alone. Realizing that the situation is at its worst possible outcome, Dende resolves that it's finally time. After 212 years, he decides to reintroduce Dragon Balls back into the world. However, there is far too much evil in the world that could lay their hands on them at this point. So Dende opts to create multiple smaller, weaker sets that limit the kind of wishes that can be made. He hopes these Dragon Balls will inspire young warriors to compete over them, and the multiple sets allow someone to realistically get all 7, supposing that the balls don't have to be from the same exact set, I guess. And finally, we hit the year that Dragon Ball Online story actually takes place, age 1000. 216 years since the end of Z. It's been 25 years since the Troublemaker education system was put in place, so many young warriors emerged from the Earthling, Namekian, and Majin races. They continue to train themselves, push for new heights, and finally fight to take back Earth from the many villainous organizations. Now, I don't plan on recapping all of the main story. In fact, that's something I'm still researching myself. But I think it would be cool to tell you how some of these plot threads resolve. Keep in mind, since Dragon Ball Online is a cancelled game, it never really had a completed story, and many elements just never got closure. For example, they may have done something with Oob at some point, but they just never got to it, making him strangely absent from the lore. Anyway, let's just talk about some of the major players, factions, and events. There are so many side characters and story details that makes my head spin, and they could warrant a whole other video itself, and this video is long enough as is. So, let's just focus on these aspects. One interesting thing about the Young Warriors you can play as in this game is that there is no Saiyan race, yet the Earthling avatars can go Super Saiyan. So, this means many of the Young Warriors are Earthlings who have descended from the lines of Goku and Vegeta. This would also be revealed as the case for B in the game's Super Dragon Ball Heroes World mission. The Namekians have a form simply known as the Red-Eyed Namekian form, which puts them on equal footing with Super Saiyans. I couldn't really find an explanation about where this form comes from, but perhaps it's a result of conquering the evil in your heart, which is what the Namekians have been struggling with ever since their time on Earth. The Majin race can undergo purification and become a pure Majin. Since all Majins descended from Buu, this means the purification makes them a pseudo-Kid Buu, with a ferocious and wild fighting style. Many of these youths will join into Trunks' time patrol to combat the Time Breakers. While the evil alliance is bound together, it's a tense relationship, as all of them have their own goals and agendas. The Dark Namekians and Timebreakers work together to construct Chocolate Tower, a dark reflection of Corrin's tower for the Black Cat Hermit Chocolate. He is assisted by the Dark Namekians' eternal dragon, Mr. Poco Poco, to gather Keely to grow dark senzu beans. Narok leader Gamelon wishes for this to be his throne akin to Kami's Lookout, his seat as the new god of this earth. However, the Time Patrol are able to defeat him along with the help of some of the freed mind-controlled Namekians. Chocolate Tower falls, but Gamelon holds out for his fellow Dark Namekian warrior Weak to assist him in taking out the Time Patrol. Unlucky for him though, Week's allegiance is completely to the Timebreakers, and so he calls Gamelon a fool for letting the tower fall, executing him for his failure. Week then faces the Time Patrol in his stead, only to fall as well. The Red Pants army are also defeated at some point, with General Bond, Clone Gero, Android 9, and the Timebreaker July all falling to the Time Patrol's power. Eventually, Tau X, along with his fellow assassins and rebuilt Red Ribbon Army, are defeated. The last of the Red Ribbon Army's legacy, Cell X, would be put in the care of Captain Bacterian thanks to Toa, in an effort to give him more energy to fight the Time Patrol. However, Cell X got tired of his confinement and eventually broke out. But, like everyone else, Cell X and his biomutant spawn would eventually fall to our heroes. The Timebreakers at this point had been going to the past multiple times, with the Time Patrol having to clean up their messes. One big reason being to give Mira the DNA of Goku to make himself the ultimate warrior in history. They would interfere with the Saiyan invasion in an attempt to attack Goku, and a strangely familiar masked man would interfere with Gohan's training by Piccolo. All are stopped dead in their tracks by the Time Patrollers. I wonder though, who could that masked guy be? Can't be Goku, as Mira wouldn't have to find Goku to extract his DNA in that case. Goten changed his hairstyle after the Buu arc, so it's probably not him. This game follows the manga continuity, so it can't be Turles. I guess we'll just have to find out. After thwarting the Timebreakers' plans to interrupt the Vegeta fight, the Time Patrol attempts to head home, only to be stopped by that masked Saiyan from earlier. The following battle results in his mask breaking and causing him to freak out and retreat. Just as the Time Patrol can finally leave, Trunks is caught off guard by an attack from Mira. The Time Patrol fight hard, but none are able to compete with Mira at all. Just as he prepares an attack to end them once and for all, the masked Saiyan puts Mira in a full Nelson. With his mask on, he's revealed to be Bardock. It turns out Mira went back in time to the moment Bardock would have been killed by Frieza, and then brainwashed him with the mask to become a loyal bodyguard. Bardock gives him his thanks for saving him back then, but now he'll do as he pleases with his own free will. Mira realizes that Bardock is planning to self-destruct and assures him that such a sacrifice would only be in vain. He would not die by such an attack. Bardock simply ignores him and says his goodbyes to Goku one more time before detonating himself. As the Time Patrol finally retreats, we see Mira standing in the aftermath of the explosion, completely unharmed. Eventually, the Timebreakers' plans send them to the Namek Arc. The Frieza Force remnants desire to revive their Emperor, and therefore they go back to the time when Frieza was still alive to hopefully collect some of his DNA. The Sorceress Toa finally reveals herself to the cast and starts possessing some of Frieza's men, turning them into giants so that they can dish out some great damage and gather Keely for her. The soldiers manage to find Frieza's tail, which was sliced off by Krillin. However, in order to fight back against the Time Patrol, a soldier named Talk ended up eating it in order to power up. Unfortunately for him and the army, the sacrifice of this precious part of Frieza was in vain. The Time Breakers and Time Patrol end up leaving right before Goku's battle with Frieza. And after their continued failings with the Time Breakers, Regal, a Frieza honor guard, decides to turn on the Time Breakers without authorization by Captain Wada. However, both eventually fall to the Time Patrol in their Sky Dungeon spaceship. And for now, that's about all I want to share about Dragon Ball Online. One day, I'll look into giving a deeper dive into the events and characters of Age 1000, but for now I think just knowing some of these events' conclusions is a good stopping point. There is also plenty of content that didn't make it beyond the concept stage that I'd like to talk about, like Toa and Mira's eventual son Fu, said to one day have a big influence in the world. But that never happened or came to pass because unfortunately, online stopped here, with many concepts just falling through. This is why, despite my continued love of poking fun at the ridiculous nature of Xenoverse and Heroes, I'm glad it could continue on some of these concepts. I remember when Xenoverse 1 was talking about Toa, Mira, and Time Patrol Trunks, and I was losing it as someone vaguely familiar with these concepts and really wanting them to be in another game. We even got to see the Supreme Kai of Time that Trunks was talking about. Then Xenoverse 2 added back the Mass Saiyan, and even decided to expand upon the concept of Fu, growing him into an adult. You know I was freaking out at the time. These were characters thought to be gone forever, now being utilized in newer Dragon Ball games. Then Dragon Ball Heroes decided to pull from online and Xenoverse as well, adding in all the aforementioned characters, expanding upon the Demon Realm, and even bringing over more obscure elements like General Bond and Cell X. No matter your opinion on these properties, it's awesome to me that online continued to have some acknowledgement to an extent. However, I think the Time Patrol stuff, while interesting on its own, is some of the least interesting aspects of Dragon Ball Online's story. The lore about what happened to the Z Fighters, how they shaped the world, and how they paved the way for the future to handle seemingly impossible odds. These are the elements that fascinated me the most. It makes the world feel alive and real, consequences are felt, and the legacy of those long gone still remain. This is what drew me into Dragon Ball Online's lore, and hopefully, one day another Dragon Ball project will have the courage to be this ambitious again. Thank you to everyone who stuck it out to the end of the video. This is my longest video yet, but it actually turned out to be shorter than I thought it would end up. But regardless, I think the length is good. I felt like mentioning everything that I found really fleshed out the history and made it seem a bit more engaging. What did you find the most interesting about Dragon Ball Online lore? Is there anything I missed you want to mention? Tell me down in the comments. And with all that said, I hope you enjoyed the video, and until next time, see ya!